So, you completed Final Fantasy VII Remake, 40, 60, 80 hours on your save file, and you've been wondering how you are going to be able to transfer that data into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth when it launches. Well, finally, we have the answer. It ain't gonna happen. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. My name is Simon, big fan of the Final Fantasy franchise, especially Final Fantasy VII, which is handy because today we are back talking about Rebirth. And in particular, today we now have that answer from Square themselves about how save files are going to work with the original FF7 remake to the sequel that's coming out February 29th next year. And they have confirmed something that many of us already expected, and that is that our save data from Remake is not going to be relevant or used in the upcoming sequel. Well, it is to a very minor degree, which I'll talk about in a little while, but for now, let's just go over the article, or at least the relevant question for this video. So, Hamaguchi was recently asked, given that this is a direct continuation of Final Fantasy VII Remake, talking about Rebirth of course, can players port over their save file and character builds to continue their journey into FF7 Rebirth? And the response we get is that we have announced that Final Fantasy VII Remake project will be a trilogy and that each entry will be a standalone game in its own right. Because of this, each game's balancing is done independently and the player's levels and abilities will not carry over from one game to the next. So not only do we have confirmation here that Rebirth will not be using save data from Remake, but the third game in the trilogy will also not be using save data from the first two games. However, we have created some special bonuses for fans who played the previous game, allowing them to start with a little something extra. And although he doesn't specify this, those little bonuses that Hamaguchi talks about there for completing the previous game are the Leviathan summon, if you have saved data for a completed FF7 remake playthrough, and the Ramuh summon, if you have saved data for a completed Intergrade playthrough. That's the Yuffie DLC. Now, I'm going to be honest with you folks, this does not surprise me in any way, shape or form. I've long expected it to be the case that save data is not going to carry over. We've seen this historically with the Final Fantasy franchise, the Final Fantasy 13 games, for example, 13, 13-2 and Lightning Returns were each independent of one another and did not transfer save data and progression between them. And it was never really going to work here with the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy either, because it would put everybody on a different playing field. If you hadn't played the first game, you would be starting Rebirth with, I guess, very little stats, and yet if you were bringing over a completed save data file, then you would be starting Rebirth with completely probably maxed out stats. It just wouldn't work. Remember, each of these entries are complete full games. Rebirth is not a DLC or an expansion to Remake, it is a full complete game in its own right, as far as we know, with upwards of 100 hours of gameplay. So yeah, it was very clear it was going to need its own independent progression track. However, what do you folks think about having those two summons, Leviathan and Ramuh, being tied to save data from the previous game? Do you think iconic summons such as those should be available to everybody who just plays Rebirth, or are you thinking it's a good idea that Square have basically limited them to those who have purchased and played the first game? I think I can understand why Square have chose to go this way. They want to give those that did play Remake a reward and also a little bit of an encouragement for those that haven't yet to perhaps want to do so, but they don't want to put people off that don't really want to play Remake but still may want to check out Rebirth. So yeah, please do share your thoughts down in the comments, and for more Final Fantasy VII Rebirth discussions and videos, stick around the channel. I've got lots planned, there's lots to talk about, and of course we will be playing the game together when it is released next year, February 29th. So I'll look forward to that, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great day.